For years, I believed sacrifice had a sound. It was the alarm ringing before sunrise, the hum of my truck in winter darkness, the quiet click of online payments made after everyone else had gone to sleep. My name is Michael, and when I married Sarah, I knew I was not only marrying a woman. I was stepping into the unfinished life she had built with her 2 sons, Tyler and Owen. They were teenagers then. Guarded. Suspicious. I never demanded that they call me Dad. I never tried to erase their biological father. I simply showed up where he did not. I paid for school trips, car repairs, medical bills, rent deposits, emergency loans that were never repaid. Whenever one of them stumbled, Sarah looked at me with tired eyes, and I reached for my wallet before she even asked. That became my place in the family. Not father. Provider. By the time both boys decided to hold their weddings within the same season, they did not ask whether I could help. They assumed I would. Venue deposits. Photographer. Transportation. Tuxedos. Decorations. Catering installments. Last-minute fees no one had planned for. Every week brought another problem. Every problem ended with my credit card. At first, they thanked me. Then the gratitude faded. Soon, they spoke about my money as though it belonged to the family before I had even earned it. Sarah stopped asking whether I agreed with decisions. Tyler and Owen made plans, changed vendors, added guests, and expected me to absorb the difference. I told myself weddings were stressful. I told myself families forgave harsh words. I told myself many things because the truth was harder. They valued what I provided, but they did not value me. The final wound came during a planning meeting at Sarah's sister's house. Relatives crowded around the dining table while Tyler argued about transportation and Owen complained that the decorations looked cheap. I suggested cutting one unnecessary expense. Nothing dramatic. Nothing cruel. Tyler laughed. Owen leaned back in his chair. Then Tyler looked directly at me and said, "You'll never be our father." Owen finished the sentence. "Just pay for everything and stay out of it." The room went silent. I looked at Sarah. She covered her mouth, but she was smiling. Then she laughed and said, "They're only stressed, Michael. Don't take it personally." That laugh changed something inside me. Not loudly. Permanently. I did not raise my voice. I did not embarrass them in front of the relatives. I simply nodded, gathered my papers, and left. That night, I sat alone in my office with every contract spread across the desk. I studied the numbers. The venue reservation carried my personal guarantee. So did the transportation contract. Several deposits had been made using my card, but future balances were still unpaid. I called each vendor the next morning. I did not cancel anything that had already been paid for. I did not sabotage the ceremony. I simply removed my name from every obligation I was legally allowed to leave. I told them the remaining balances would be handled by Tyler and Owen. Then I stopped paying. No speeches. No threats. No revenge. For the first time in years, I allowed a problem to remain someone else's problem. 3 days before the ceremony, the venue called. The overdue balance had not been received. Unless payment arrived by the following afternoon, the reservation would be released. Within hours, the photographer called Tyler. The transportation company contacted Owen. The decorator refused delivery until the final invoice was settled. Panic entered the family like smoke. Sarah burst into my office holding her phone. "How could you do this?" I looked at her calmly. "I did what they asked. I stayed out of it." Tyler called me selfish. Owen accused me of humiliating them. I asked only one question. "Why did you promise money you did not have?" Mather answered. "They picked up extra shifts. They borrowed from friends. They sold expensive electronics. They negotiated with vendors and cut parts of the reception they had once considered essential." For the first time, they saw the wedding not as a celebration appearing by magic, but as a chain of bills attached to real labor. My labor. 2 nights before the ceremony, Tyler called. His voice was quiet. "I didn't know how much you were handling." I said nothing. Then he apologized. Owen came to the house the following morning. He stood in the doorway with shadows beneath his eyes and admitted that he had believed things simply worked themselves out. "They worked out," I told him, "because I worked them out." He lowered his head. The wedding happened. Smaller than planned. Less polished. But it happened. Afterward, something changed. Sarah returned to work. Tyler and Owen began paying their own bills. They stopped calling me whenever a tire went flat or a payment came due. They asked before making commitments involving my money. Respect did not arrive in one grand moment. It came slowly. In hesitation. In gratitude. In the unfamiliar sound of grown men saying, "I'll handle it." I never wanted to ruin their wedding. I wanted them to understand that support is not an entitlement, and love is not a blank check. For years, I had confused sacrifice with duty. I believed that if I gave enough, endured enough, paid enough, I would finally earn a place in the family. But respect purchased with money is not respect. It is dependence wearing a polite face. So tell me, was I wrong to step away when they reduced me to a wallet, or was allowing them to face the consequences the only honest thing I had left to give? The wedding ended beneath strings of warm lights, with music drifting across the emptying hall and exhausted vendors stacking chairs around us. Everyone smiled for photographs, but I could feel the truth moving quietly beneath the celebration. Tyler and Owen had made it through the day, yet neither of them looked carefree anymore. Every toast, every plate, every hour of music now had a price they understood. I stood near the back wall while Sarah danced with relatives. Once, I would have rushed from table to table, checking invoices, tipping workers, solving problems before anyone noticed them. That night, I kept my hands in my pockets. The brothers handled it. When the caterer questioned the final count, Owen answered. When the driver demanded payment for overtime, Tyler negotiated. When decorations had to be packed before midnight, both of them removed their jackets and started carrying boxes. No one called my name. For the first time, that did not hurt. It felt like freedom. On the drive home, Sarah stared through the passenger window. Her shoes rested on the floor beside her, and the makeup around her eyes had begun to fade. For several miles, neither of us spoke. Then she said, "You could have helped them more." I tightened my hands around the steering wheel. "They managed. They almost didn't. But they did." Her silence returned, heavy and familiar. It was the same silence she had used whenever her sons mocked me, whenever they dismissed my advice, whenever they accepted my money without looking me in the face. Only now, silence no longer protected her. It exposed her. At home, I removed my tie and found 3 unopened bills on the kitchen counter. Sarah had left them there deliberately. In the past, that was all it took. She would place a bill where I could see it, and by morning the balance would disappear. I looked at them. Then I walked away. The next afternoon, she followed me into the garage. "The electric bill is overdue. I paid my share into the household account. There isn't enough. Then we need to spend less." Her expression changed. Not anger at first. Fear. For years, Sarah had lived inside the certainty that I would close every gap. She could work fewer hours, lend money to Tyler, cover Owen's mistakes, and still sleep peacefully because I stood beneath the family like a foundation no one needed to see. Now the foundation had boundaries. She accused me of punishing her. I told her I was protecting myself. Those were not the same thing. The following weeks were uncomfortable. Sarah returned to full-time work. Tyler canceled a vacation he could not afford. Owen sold the motorcycle he had financed after ignoring my warning about the payments. Their lives did not collapse. They adjusted. That was the part one had never understood. By rescuing them from every consequence, I had not been loving them. I had been keeping them weak. I had made myself necessary, then resented them for needing me. But they had also learned to treat my sacrifice as something without limits. That lesson had to die. One evening, Tyler came over carrying a folder. He sat across from me at the kitchen table and showed me a budget he had made. Rent, insurance, food, debt. Numbers crossed out and rewritten until they finally balanced. I never knew how much everything cost, he admitted. I studied his face. The arrogance I remembered from the wedding meeting was gone. Because someone always paid before you had to know. He nodded. Then he pushed an envelope toward me. Inside was the first installment of money he owed for one of the deposits I had already covered. I almost refused it. The old part of me wanted to tell him to keep it, to use it for groceries, to let me absorb one more loss in the name of peace. But peace built on my surrender was not peace. I accepted the envelope. "Thank you," I said. His eyes lowered. "No," he whispered. "Thank you." Owen took longer. He avoided me for nearly a month. Then one rainy evening, he appeared at the door soaked through, his hair pressed against his forehead. He did not ask to come inside. "I thought you enjoyed paying," he said. The confession sounded absurd, but I knew what he meant. He had mistaken my willingness for ease. He believed generosity cost me nothing because I rarely showed the strain. "I enjoyed believing I mattered," I told him. He flinched. That sentence wounded both of us. Owen apologized without excuses. Not because a vendor was threatening him. Not because he needed money. He apologized because he had finally seen me as a man instead of a resource. I let him inside. Forgiveness did not arrive that night. Trust did not rebuild itself because he stood in my hallway with rainwater on his shoes. But something began. Months passed. The house grew quieter, though not colder. Sarah started discussing expenses with me instead of presenting decisions after they had already been made. Tyler called for advice and listened even when my answer was no. Owen repaired his own car rather than leaving the keys on my counter. Small things. Heavy things. The kind of things respect is built from. I still loved them. That had never been the question. The question was whether loving them required me to disappear beneath their needs. It did not. I had spent years believing a good stepfather endured everything. The insults. The exclusion. The endless expectation. I thought boundaries would make me selfish, and refusal would make me cruel. But a man who gives until nothing remains is not holding a family together. He is teaching them that destroying him has no cost. So I stopped rescuing them. And only when I stepped back did they finally learn to stand. Was I wrong to let the people I loved struggle, or was struggle the only language strong enough to teach them what my sacrifice had been worth? Respect did not transform our family overnight. It arrived awkwardly, uncertainly, like someone knocking on a door after years of pretending the house was empty. The first real change came on an ordinary Saturday morning. I was replacing a broken fence panel behind the garage when I heard footsteps on the gravel. I expected a delivery driver. Instead, Tyler walked through the gate carrying a toolbox. He didn't smile. He didn't offer excuses. He simply asked, "Need another pair of hands?" For years, I would have answered before he finished the sentence. I would have handed him the easier task while taking the heavier load myself. This time I passed him the post-hole digger. He worked without complaint. Neither of us spoke much. The rhythm of digging, measuring, and setting concrete filled the silence better than conversation ever could. By noon, the fence stood straight again. Tyler wiped the sweat from his forehead and looked at the finished work. "I used to think this stuff just happened." I leaned against the shovel. "No. Somebody always did it." He nodded slowly. "I never wondered who." That confession stayed with me long after he drove away. Invisible work is strange. People notice it only after it stops. They admire clean houses without seeing who scrubbed them. They enjoy warm rooms without thinking about who paid the heating bill. They celebrate weddings without asking who signed the contracts months earlier. For years, I had lived inside that invisibility. Not because anyone forced me. Because I allowed it. Sarah noticed the difference too. One evening she placed several envelopes on the kitchen table before catching herself. Her hand froze halfway through the familiar motion. Instead of walking away, she opened one. "We need to decide how to handle these." Those words were simple. But they were different. Not, "Can you take care of them?" Not, "They need paying." We. For the first time in years, I felt like a partner instead of an emergency fund. Owen changed more slowly than his brother. Pride clung to him like old paint. Whenever we met, he seemed ready to defend himself before anyone accused him of anything. Then his truck broke down outside town. Years ago, my phone would have rung immediately. Instead, he spent 2 days finding affordable parts, borrowing tools, and repairing it himself. When he finally stopped by the house, his hands were stained with grease. "I figured it out." "I know." "You knew?" "I saw your truck." He hesitated before continuing. "I almost called you." "What stopped you?" He smiled faintly. "I wanted to prove I could solve my own problems." There was no bitterness in his voice. Only quiet satisfaction. That was the moment I realized boundaries had not pushed them away. They had pushed them forward. Sarah eventually apologized. Not dramatically. Not through tears. One night, while washing dishes together, she spoke without looking at me. I laughed because I wanted to avoid conflict. I dried another plate. "I know. I thought keeping everyone happy would fix things. It didn't." "No." The single word carried years of regret. She admitted she had confused peace with silence, believing that ignoring disrespect would somehow make it disappear. Instead, it had grown stronger. Silence had protected the wrong people. Months passed before another family dinner brought everyone together. This time the atmosphere felt unfamiliar. No one assumed I would pay. No one ordered expensive food because I happened to be sitting at the table. When the check arrived, Tyler reached for it first. Owen stopped him. "We'll split it." Sarah looked toward me out of habit. I smiled. "I'm covering my meal." Nobody argued. Nobody looked offended. The waiter returned with separate receipts, and the conversation continued as though that had always been normal. Driving home, I realized why the evening felt different. Nothing had been purchased with obligation. Everything had been shared by choice. That difference changes a family more than money ever can. People often imagine boundaries as walls. Mine became a doorway. Through it walked accountability. Through it came honesty. Through it entered respect that years of sacrifice alone had never earned. I still helped when I wanted to. I still gave birthday gifts. I still celebrated holidays with them. The difference was simple. Help became a gift instead of an expectation. Generosity became voluntary instead of automatic. Love finally stood on its own instead of hiding behind my wallet. Sometimes I think back to that wedding meeting, to the moment Tyler said I would never be their father and Owen told me to pay and stay out of it. Oddly enough, those cruel words became the turning point our family desperately needed. Had they never spoken them, I might still be writing checks while quietly disappearing inside my own home. Instead, I learned that saying no does not destroy love. Sometimes it saves it. And if someone values you only while your wallet is open, they never truly valued you at all. So I ask you one last time. Would you have continued paying simply to keep the peace? Or would you have risked losing everything in order to finally keep your self-respect? A year after the wedding, I found one of the old vendor contracts in the bottom drawer of my desk. The paper had yellowed slightly at the edges, but my signature still looked fresh, dark, and confident. I remembered the man who had written it. He believed that paying was the same as belonging. He thought every deposit bought him another brick in the walls of a family that might finally call him its own. I held the contract for a long time. Then I tore it in half. Not because I hated Tyler or Owen. Not because I regretted helping them. I tore it because I no longer wanted evidence of the price I had once placed on my own dignity. By then, both brothers had changed. Tyler had taken a second job managing inventory at a warehouse. The hours were ugly, and his hands were always marked by cardboard cuts. But he stopped complaining about being tired around me. He knew I had spent years coming home with the same exhaustion hidden beneath my coat. Owen began tracking every dollar he earned. He carried a small notebook in his pocket and wrote down fuel, groceries, insurance, and debts. Once, I saw him hesitate over buying coffee because he had already reached his weekly limit. That hesitation told me more than any apology. Sarah changed too, though part of me remained cautious around her. Trust does not return simply because someone becomes kinder. A wound can close while the flesh beneath it still aches. Whenever she laughed at something Tyler said, I sometimes heard the echo of that planning meeting. I saw her smiling while I stood before her sons like a servant being reminded of his place. She noticed my distance. One evening, she asked whether I had forgiven her. I told her the truth. I am trying. Her face fell, but she nodded. Years earlier, I would have lied to protect her feelings. I would have said everything was fine and carried the pain alone. That man no longer lived in our house. Forgiveness, I learned, was not pretending the betrayal had never happened. It was refusing to let that betrayal control every day that followed. Sarah had to earn her way back into the places her silence had damaged. And she did the work. When Tyler asked us for help with a car payment, Sarah did not look at me. She told him he needed to adjust his budget. When Owen wanted money for a trip, she asked what he planned to sell or sacrifice to afford it. The first few times, both sons looked surprised. Then they understood. Their mother was no longer handing their problems to me. One winter night, a storm knocked out power across the neighborhood. The house went black, and the old instinct returned immediately. Everyone turned toward me. For a moment, anger rose in my chest. Of course. Michael would fix it. Michael always fixed it. Then Tyler stood. I'll check the breaker. Owen grabbed a flashlight and followed him to the basement. Sarah found candles. I remained at the table. 10 minutes later, the lights returned. Tyler came upstairs grinning, and Owen mocked him for flipping the wrong switch twice. I laughed with them. It was a small moment, almost meaningless to anyone outside our family. But to me, it felt like the proof I had been waiting for. They had not needed me. They had still wanted me there. There is a difference. Being needed can look like love when you are lonely enough. People call your name, reach for you, and panic when you step away. It makes you feel important. But sometimes they are not reaching for the man. They are reaching for what he provides. Being wanted is quieter. It remains after the bills are paid, after the emergency passes, after there is nothing left to gain. That night, we sat together in the restored light, and no one asked me for anything. I finally felt like family. Months later, Tyler invited me to lunch. He chose a modest diner and paid before I could reach for the check. Outside, beside my truck, he stopped me. I meant what I said that day, he admitted. I knew exactly which day. He continued before I could answer. I wanted you to feel like you had no place. I thought accepting you meant betraying my father. The honesty struck harder than an excuse would have. Did he ask you to treat me that way? No. I decided it myself. I appreciated that he did not hide behind another man. Your father is part of you, I said. I never asked you to erase him. I know that now. He looked older than he had at the wedding. Not because of the lines near his eyes or the roughness in his hands, but because he had finally learned to carry the weight of his own choices. Owen's confession came later. He told me he had followed Tyler because cruelty was easier when shared. He had laughed because his brother laughed. He had repeated words he knew would hurt because he wanted to prove where his loyalty belonged. But when you stepped back, he said, I realized loyalty should not require humiliating someone else. I did not embrace him. Not then. Some truths need silence after them. But when he left, I placed my hand on his shoulder. It was enough. I used to believe respect was something a stepfather earned by surviving disrespect. I thought endurance made me noble. It did not. It made my suffering convenient. My boundaries did what my sacrifices never could. They forced everyone, including me, to see the difference between love and surrender. I remained generous. But I stopped being available for exploitation. I remained their stepfather. But I stopped begging to be treated like a father. And strangely, only then did they begin to see me as one. So tell me, when love demands that you lose yourself to keep others comfortable, is walking away cruelty, or is it the first honest act of love?